Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I'm always told I had a voice radio, so today I'm going to be showing you an extremely exciting new Weavile card. Now, I didn't immediately see the greatness of this card, I'm not entirely sure why, but a correspondent of mine over in Japan told me that this was a very hyped card over in Japan. People are very excited about it, and I had another look, and yeah, I don't know why I've yet to do a video, but I'm rectifying that today. Now, it is going to be coming out in the Sun and Moon 2 Strengthening Expansion Pack in Japan, which means it's going to be coming out in our August set Burning Shadows, which will be legal for the very first time on the first day of Worlds. Now, Weavile is a dark Pokemon, which is essentially irrelevant. You're not hitting anything for weakness except for Trevenant in Expanded. Although you will get a one-hit KO on an active Trevenant, more on that in a moment. The weakness to fighting is not ideal with cards like Lycanroc and Zygarde and Persimmon, but it doesn't really matter because you've only got 90 HP. Now, the good news is that 90 HP means that you can search for Weavile using Level Ball. The bad news is he's got 90 HP, he's not lasting very long, but I suppose that does mean that the fighting weakness becomes essentially irrelevant. But there are a couple of other cool things about Weavile. First of all, he's got a resistance to Psychic, and 90 HP is paltry, but resistance is always fun. But what I really like, and this isn't new for Weavile cards, but Weavile has no retreat cost, which is just awesome. It means that when a Pokemon gets knocked out, you can stick Weavile in the active, and maybe you attack with Weavile, maybe you don't, but you can free retreat if you decide not to attack with Weavile. And he is a stage 1, which means you can use Wally to evolve straight away. I'm not usually a huge fan of Wally. Now, don't forget that now we've got Tapu Lele. Wally is easy to search out and use, but I'm not usually a huge fan of Wally. This card I am, more on that and the reasons for it in a moment. Now, Weavile has a second attack. It does 70 for 2 energy. It's not good. Let's leave it at that. But the first attack... oh, the first attack, ladies and gentlemen, that is a very good attack. 1 colourless energy on a stage 1, so you can tech it into any deck you like. This attack does 60 damage to every Pokemon in play that has an ability. Now, we need to worry about the translation of this. Usually, it doesn't apply weakness and resistance to bench Pokemon, and there are some brackets at the end of the Japanese text which would indicate that that's the case. Although the translation I've seen doesn't say that, I think it's fair to assume. And also it says every Pokemon in play. That means yours and your opponent's. This is ludicrous. Now, of course, it hits your own Pokemon with abilities, but that shouldn't be a huge problem because you should only be using Weavile where you're getting more KOs on them than you. It doesn't matter if you KO a couple of your Pokemon with abilities, as long as you KO enough of your opponent to win the game first. Now, this card is not entirely without precedent. Those of you playing in the Heart Gold Soul Silver era may remember the double cards, as it were, the legend cards, which were you'd have to have both of them in your hand at the same time and play them down as a pair. This made them awkward to get into play. But we had Entei Raikou Legend, which had an attack for a lightning and a colourless. You needed to discard all energy attached to it, and you did 80 damage to each Pokemon that had any Poker Powers. Now, the terminology was slightly different back then. Active abilities were Poker Powers, and passive abilities were Poker Bodies. So, for instance, Decidueye would have a Poker Power back in the day, whereas Vileplume would have a Poker Body. Now, this was awkward to use because you had to play down both halves of the legend at once, and you had to discard the energy, and the attack cost was a little bit awkward, but you got to KO any Pokemon that had Poker Powers, and this was yours and your opponent's, which at the time was huge because of cards like Uxie, Claydol and Shaymin, all of whom had Poker Powers and 80 HP or less. And the same deal was here. You would use this and you'd KO your own Uxies, etc., but you would only use this card. It was a closer. You would only use it when you would get a KO on more of your opponents than yours, or where you would win the game by using it. That was how it worked. That's how Weavile works. You're going to be hitting your own Pokemon as well. We assume it could be slightly different when we get the official English translation, but it seems at the moment it hits you and your opponent. But that's okay. Like I've said, you just need to manage the game. Now, we could go through some examples here, and we're going to, but let's be clear. There's like a million different reasons this could be good, a million different uses. Let's go through a couple of them. The obvious one, Shaman EX, 110 HP. It means 2 Weavile attacks, every Shaman on the field is KO'd. That is good. Tapu Lele's going to be quite big. 3 Weavile attacks and all the Tapu Lele's are KO'd. Now, you're doing 180 with 3 attacks to KO the Tapu Lele. That would work for a whole bunch of other Pokemon. Things like Giratina, for instance, would be KO'd by this, as well as cards like Volcanion EX. So that's 3 attacks. 4 attacks, you're now hitting up to 240, and you're catching the big GXs like Decidueye. But let's not forget, some weaker Pokemon have abilities too. Take the Energy Evolution Eevee, for example. 60 HP. Which means that 1 attack from Weavile will wipe all of your opponent's Eevees out instantly. Even something like a Wobbuffet would be KO'd by 2 attacks from this. Something like a Vileplume, for instance, would be KO'd by 3 of these attacks. And it's just so good against so many decks. I mean, there's an awful lot of decks where just KOing, and let's not forget, EXs and GXs give up 2 prizes. So you get 3 EXs or GXs with abilities, think Shaman, think Tapu Lele, you win the game. Right there. But then think about decks like Decidueye, Vileplume. You're sitting there on a stage 1 for 1 colourless energy, doing 60 damage per turn to all of their Pokemon. And that will add up nice and quickly, and you will end up wiping their board, or at least getting rid of all the really good Pokemon that they need, like Decidueye and like Vileplume. And this is where we come back to Weavile's pitiful 90 HP. Because you really are going to want probably 2 or 3 Weavile attacks in most games. But Weavile is going to be KO'd straight away, because he's got 90 HP. Most decks can hit 90. So you need to be streaming Weavile. You need to be making sure that you've got a Weavile every turn. And it doesn't really matter if you're getting Weaviles KO'd every turn, if every turn you're bringing out a new Weavile, evolving a Sneasel, doing 60 to everything that's got an ability, and really trying to wipe the board in that manner. It is worth it, but you do need to really stream these Weaviles to make the most of it. And this is one of the reasons I'm a fan of Wally in this deck, or if you're using this card. Told you we'd come back to him. Because really here, as long as your opponent drops down a Shaman and a Tapu Lele on turn 1, then Weavile can start doing damage from turn 1. Playing something like a Wally could be very, very good. Because what you do, when you start using Weavile, you put your opponent on a clock. They have got, if you use this against a Shaman, they have got 1 turn to heal or remove their Shaman from the field, or they will all be KO'd and give up 2 prizes. Use it against a Tapu Lele, they've got 2 turns to get that Tapu Lele off the field. Maybe they play an Acerola to pick it up, link to that video in the description. Maybe they play a Max Potion to heal it. But if they don't, you are going to get the KO in 2 turns' time, and that's what makes Weavile so good. But here's my problem with Weavile, and it's not really the 90 HP that worries me here. Because like I said, you can stream, you can even play 1 or 2 Wallies in your deck, reuse it with Versus Seeker, and Wally any turn you didn't have a Sneasel down the previous one. It's a colourless Pokemon, it's a stage 1, you can put it in any deck. Here's my problem. You are really going to need to use 3 or 4 Weavile attacks in a lot of games to win the game. Which means you're going to be playing a 3-3 or 4-4 Weavile line. Remember that sometimes they will be prized, meaning you'll have Sneasels or Weaviles in your prizes, so you won't have access to them. So that's 6 to 8 spots in your deck, essentially on attack. Because that's really what Weavile is. Weavile is brilliant if your opponent has loads of Pokemon on the field with abilities. But if they don't have loads of abilities on the field, or they're playing a deck that doesn't play many abilities, Weavile becomes rubbish. 70 for 2 energy isn't good. So you need a partner. Maybe it's Tauros, maybe it's Vespiquen, maybe it's Zoroark. There's a whole bunch of Pokemon that you can partner Weavile with. But here's my big problem with Weavile. You need to use multiple Weaviles because you're assuming they're going to get KO'd. You have to assume they're going to get KO'd. So you need to use multiple Weaviles to make the most of it, but that takes up a lot of space in your deck, and you're going to need a partner for Weavile. Love that he's a stage 1. Love that he attacks for a single energy, and this attack can devastate decks. Your opponent can just play a couple of Shaman and a Tapu Lele, and then realise that they lose the game in 3 turns, and there's nothing they can do about it. That's the power of Weavile. But you are going to have to build your Weavile deck very, very carefully, ladies and gentlemen, because you're putting 8 spots in your deck for Weavile, and even though he only takes 1 energy, you're going to need other Pokemon, because if you're playing a deck that doesn't have abilities, either you use a backup attacker or you lose. All that being said, I cannot give Weavile any less than between 4 and 5 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies for reasons of barbarity, which I'm assuming is a word. However, let me be clear about this. This is a stunning card. This is a brilliant card. This is a card that might not end up being amazing. Why is it being hyped in Japan? Because the potential here is utterly, utterly immense. There are going to be games where you drop a Weavile and go, I win in 3 turns, try and stop me. Now, you know the deal, ladies and gentlemen. There is a comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. There are buttons to both like this video and subscribe to this channel. Use them both. It will make me happy. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @TheWassie. And the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.